Hello, Professor Toybox here along with Wreck-It Ralph, and today I'm going to build the interior of the Starcade. And that's going to go right over here through this door, which is now empty space. So we're going to go ahead and fill this in. And we're going to begin with this long, tiny terrain block. Let me pull up my screen grab here, and we're going to line this up. Swing the camera around so you can see a little better. We're going to line this up about like that and up against the edge of that building. So we're going to drop that first one there, and I'm going to set the theme on this. And we're going to use the Alien Planet theme from the Toy Story in Space playset. And I set that to be my theme. And we're going to stack these two high. Like this. And then the next, well, let's just go ahead and put this in now. We'll put this in on the corner to kind of plug the gap. And then we'll run the back wall of the Starcade across here. Like that. And this next one will sit over here up against the building. And drop it down, so like that. And that frames in the arcade. And then we'll come up here and grab this piece. And I'm going to line this up over here with the edge of the seam between those two building pieces up at the top of the screen. And this is wide enough to place two of these across. And then we'll grab this terrain corner piece here, and I'm going to put this one about one block out from that corner. So if you go two little nudges, that's about a block. And again, a block is that. That's my unit of measure. All right. And then we're going to put this one on the opposite side. And this one in the middle. And this will give a little bit of foreground for our targets to move behind. And so let's go ahead and style these. And once again, we're going to use the Toy Story in Space strip. I'll apply that. We're going to do the same over here. And this saves us a little bit of memory because we're going to be using these same pieces in the Buzz Lightyear Astro Blasters ride. The only new memory I'm really adding is going to be for these. And I'm going to style these based on the Niceland terrain strip. And I put both of these, two of these down. I'll use the same piece to save a little bit of memory. So once you add a piece into the toy box, you get a memory spike. It costs you something to add another variety, a piece variety in there. Since we've already added that, we'll use two of these. And I did that because it kind of looks like a video game, which is what we're going to build next time. Alright, and then the last thing we need here are the arcade machines, and all of those are in the interior toy box. So once again, I'm going to use the trick that I used in Episode 5 to bring the interior toys out. So to do that, we're going to need a toy box door. And that's down in the Gameplay Toys drawer. So we'll set this down. This is just in here temporarily. And I'm going to go ahead and edit the properties on this, and we'll set the destination tag to link to an existing toy box, and it'll be my Haunted Mansion toy box eventually. That's our interior toy box for right now, and the door link is complete. Alright, and then before this episode started, I added a few extra controls down here that we're going to use when we come back to this toy box. So I added a dynamic trigger out here, and a logic gate, a counter, and a replayer. And all of these come from the Creativitoys drawer. And there's one more Creativitoy that I want, and that's going to be a locator. And we're going to place this right about the middle of those two beams and on that seam between those two plant pieces that we customized earlier. So that's where that locator needs to go. And so that's everything we're going to place out of the editor for the exterior toys here. So let me come back out of the editor. And at this point I'm going to save my progress and then go through that toy box door into the interior toy box, and I'll meet you there in just a moment. Alright, here we are in the interior toy box, and the first thing I need to do, we have these toys we put down the last time we used this. First thing I need to do is update the toy box door. Because right now that's taking us back to Main Street, USA, and we need to update this so it'll take us back to Tomorrowland. So we'll edit the properties, and we're going to change the destination, link to an existing toy box, and we're going to Tomorrowland this time when we go back. Alright. And I believe, let's see, it's that button over there that we're hooked up to. Okay. So now we need to find those arcade machines. And if we scroll through the list, interior, sidekicks, seating and beds, electronics and appliances, and here we are. These are the arcade machines that we need. And there's a whole bunch of things that we can add, so this is really great. Okay, we'll start with that one. I'll go ahead and leave that selected, and I'm going to exit out of the editor. And then we're going to come over and push our button, which activates a 5-second timer before that time delayer activates the door and changes the level. And once again, that gives me time to open up the drawers. And so I will fast forward and meet you back there in just a moment. Okay, here we are back in Tomorrowland, and first thing we're going to do is come over here to our replayer, which is this one, and step on that and open up the menu in the lower right. And I'm using the replayer because these interior toys that I'm adding, I'm going to add a variety of them. And once again, each new piece that you add to your toy box increases the memory because it has to load in the model for that into the toy box. And I don't have the memory to spare on my Wii U. And so if the player isn't even in the Starcade, we don't really need those toys to be in the toy box. And so I'm going to use the replayer to add and remove them dynamically. So when the player enters the Starcade, we'll go ahead and put the arcade machines in there. And once they leave that building, they're never going to notice that those aren't there, so we can take them out safely and reclaim that memory, which we can then use for vehicles and other things. So I'm on the replayer. I'm going to go ahead on my Wii U and press B to start recording. Alright, and then we're going to step off. And now when I open the editor, having come from the interior toys, we have our interior toy drawer. And again, that's a bug that we can exploit here in the system. So I'm going to drop down this Space Crane game over here. And let me pull up my screen grabs as to where all of these go, because I kind of had an order for these. Not that I suppose it really matters. But the Sugar Rush arcade game and my Starcade I placed over here. And then along this wall, I've got Stitch's Tropical Rescue. Nope, sorry. Fix-It Felix Jr. is what I put here. So I'm going to place that one here. And then Stitch's game will sit next to it right on that terrain seam. And then I'm going to put down a couple of pinball machines. Where did those go? Here's one. So we're going to place the this first pinball machine here. And then we'll place this other one back here next to that. And I'm trying to put a good variety in here because you don't want to just show the same arcade game over and over again. If you went into an actual arcade, you'd see a good variety of machines. Alright, and then, let's see. I had this Swing Frenzy game next. That sat here. And then Stitch Invaders, once again, next to that, because I can't go too crazy with the variety. I had the Tron game next to that, and then Fix-It Felix Jr. here again next to that. And if you're on a system that has a little bit more memory, instead of duplicating the machines we put down there, you could add the Mansion of the Departed and maybe this District 51, and they all have nice graphics on the sides and so forth. Alright, so there's our arcade. So we'll go ahead and exit out of the editor. And we'll come back and step on our replayer to get that menu in the lower right. And once again, I press B on my Wii U to stop recording. And I'll press A to clear. And you want to be careful to only press A one time, because if you press it twice, that'll corrupt your replayer. And now we can see that the machines are gone. Alright, so to bring them back and add and remove them dynamically, we need to hook up these other Creativitoys. So we'll go ahead and do that next. So we'll start with this dynamic trigger, and we're going to do a new locator connection on that. And I'm going to connect that up to this locator that we put down before. And by the way, we're done with this toy box door, so we can go ahead and remove that. Alright, on the dynamic trigger, for the properties on that, the target needs to be the locator that we just connected. And the trigger distance, I'm going to set this to be 40. That'll be a 10 block radius around that locator. Alright, on the counter, for the properties on that, let me just double check here. We want to turn off the visible display because I don't need to see that. And all the rest of these properties are fine. And then of course on the replayer, for the properties on that, we want to take the playback interval to 0 so that those machines show up as quickly as possible. And then basically we're going to hook these up the same way we did in Mickey's Safari for the different zones that had the animals in them. So in case you're wondering if you've seen this before and you've seen that series, then yeah, you have. So we're going to do a new logic connection, excuse me, a new logic connection on the dynamic trigger when entered by player any. First thing we'll do is come to our logic gate and do an input. And on the logic gate, a new logic connection on output. Go to the replayer and do a playback. So whenever the player enters the 10 block radius around the locator in there, like when they come through that door, then that'll trigger the replayer to play and put those arcade machines in there. And we only want to do that once. That's why we have this logic gate here. So on the replayer, a new logic connection on playback. So when playback happens, we're going to turn around and come back to the logic gate and close it. Okay? And then that way, if we have a second player in here and they enter this area too, that'll try to send the same signal through this logic gate, but the logic gate will be closed and the signal won't go anywhere. So we won't corrupt our replayer. And then we need the counter to keep track of the number of players in that area. So on the dynamic trigger, we'll do a new logic connection when entered by player any, not only do we go to that logic gate, but we're going to come over to our counter, and we're going to increment the counter by 1. And on the dynamic trigger, new logic connection when exited by player any, come over to our counter and decrement it by 1. So the counter is now keeping track of how many players are in that area around that locator. And then on the counter, new logic connection, when 0 is reached, so when all the players leave the area, we're going to do 2 things. First thing we want to do is come over to our replayer and clear it. And that'll take those arcade machines out. The other thing we want to do on the counter, a new logic connection when 0 is reached, come back to our logic gate and open it so that when a player comes back into that area, we can put those arcade machines back. And there we go. That should take care of that. Oh, and again, it's a 40 block radius, or a 40 unit radius, so a 10 block radius. So I think it's like 2 to here, 3, 4, 5, 6. These things are 4 blocks wide, so it's basically coming out to about here, I think. The front edge of that building are just a little bit beyond. And then of course it's a circular radius, so basically when we walk through this door, that will put the arcade machines in there, and we can go ahead and test that. So when we walk in, there's our machines, and when we walk out, how do we know that it took them out? Well, that's real easy. We come into the editor, go into Spark mode, take a peek over the wall, and the machines are gone. So there we are. And we still have the roof to put in here, but before we put that in, we're going to need to build the arcade game that's in the Starcade, and we'll do that next time. So we can come back in here and just take a quick look. There's all our arcade machines. And here we go. So that's my version of the Starcade. Next time I'll add the logic for the video game shooting challenge. But that's all for me today. Don't forget to hit the like button before you go and leave a comment to let me know what you think of the Starcade. Also, if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, just click my photo in the lower right corner of this video. Have a great day!